it. Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. Just had a mind-expanding 90-minute hang with Joe Lovano, and I got a chance now to lock in with one of my peers and a guy who I find a lot of simpatico with because his taste in music is just one that's rife with dynamics and sort of like spiritual in all genres. And I just feel like, you know, in so many ways we've entered into this time. Of course, there's really no roadmap now coming out of the pandemic, but just this idea of playing it safe and this conformity and this formula trip, especially in rock music, but it's not foreign to improvisational music either, where things become quite predictable and you see people much more wrapped up in technique or a solo they've been working on or chops, as opposed to letting the music take them on a journey, going for it, leaving the thinking mind and entering the spirit mind, and then all of a sudden you've entered the intergalactic and you can let the body dance. And my guest has been doing this on the bandstand and trying to on studio albums for really the last 35 plus years. And definitely he may not want to hear this, but he definitely is an elder statesman to younger cats who are, you know, searching for the light as we head into a whole new paradigm as it relates to a domestic touring circuit here and in the world. Happy 4th, Robert Walter. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, brother. You know, I wanted you to just talk about, in your mind, how you learned. I know your dad was in like a Grateful Dead jam band kind of thing, but I wanted you to talk about how over time you learned to take the notes on the page or whatever music you created and then go off script and make it your own.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of started doing that from when I first was playing piano. I took a little bit of classical lessons, but I always would sit down and just sort of, you know, like let it take me somewhere and improvise in a kind of a free way. You know, and I did basically I was playing like long modal thing. I pick a scale and sort of screw around in it. But I remember doing it. I remember I was at a summer camp when I was a child, and there was a piano sitting in the sort of like the room where they would do sort of assemblies and stuff. And we had free time, and there was no one in there, and I started playing the piano because I liked the reverb in the room. And then, like, a crowd of the other campers gathered, and I was just playing some form stuff, and it kind of got me hooked. You know, I was like, wow, people will listen to this. Like, I don't have to learn the song. It's like a thing. And, you know, I love composition and all that, too. But,
sure.
But really the thing that gets me excited is that the part of it that's mysterious to me. the part of it that I don't understand why it works. And so there's always an attempt to get out of, I use improvisational techniques that are tried and true, and I play in the right key and I do all that stuff, and that all gets you there. But the thing that gets me going is when you kind of push beyond that and you play things that you don't know why they make sense or where it came from. And, I think you're right on with that. That's the thing I talk to with a lot of my like collaborators and people that I play with too. That's you want to figure it out, but you don't want to figure it out so much that there's no mystery in it.
Mm. So beautiful. I mean, can you talk about, I mean, obviously the camping experience is, you're playing like Dick Hyman stuff for the cats and they're all like, looking around like, and it's like a sound collage, but was there, I mean, when you practice, are you playing what you don't know? Are you basically, I mean, isn't that what practice is about? There's become so much formula, so much codifying of the language of the music that we love. And so that there's this one way to do it, which is just ridiculous, because I mean, you just, Jack McDuff and Lonnie Smith and Lou Donaldson, these guys were just burning away. I mean, it was just, their ears were huge. And I just wonder, if you could talk about like an early experience on the bandstand when you went for it and had the rudiments to play what you didn't know how to play and pulled it off, and that mystery became intoxicating.
Well, one of the things I did early on in my career, or pre-career, I guess, my dad was a drummer, and he, like I said, he was in sort of like a jamming band when I was really young. But then later on, he ended up playing in blues bands and stuff like that. And I joined his blues band. We played 4 sets of blues. And it was like, it's a long night, and things would kind of arc in a certain way, where first set was kind of safe, then second set you might try some new stuff, and then by the end of the night it got looser and looser, as things do in a
absolutely
bar setting.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But I would and it was all based upon most of the tunes were 12-bar tunes. We would do some other things. We'd do, some Al Green tunes and stuff like that to mix it up. But to play that much of some form, you really get up. Just to keep yourself interested, you start turning it inside out and changing things, which I think kind of goes with. I mean, I feel like when the Grateful Dead started jamming, part of it was that they didn't have enough songs.
Absolutely,
that's the
absolutely.
Story. They would start to stretch these things out, and then when you're really forced to investigate the same material over and over again, you start looking for things in it. I mean, it's one thing to play totally free, but I like dealing with a song or a form or some source material that sparks the thing. And then you fugue it. You you look at it sideways and you look at it backwards, and you take the material. You can use the rhythms in different ways.
I love you're fuging it out, man. I love this, dude.
Yeah.
Why is that so? Why?
That
was the thing that popped into my head, Walter. I mean, again, part of it's like I'm actually feel grateful that I'm in the minority about that. But I mean, I know that we align very much in our musical tastes, and I wonder why a majority of beings cannot detect why that music grooves so hard. I don't like the idea of modern pop music having no dynamics and, very, and sort of just a very sequential efficiency model to it. I mean, I see, whether it's Rusty Bryant, Andy Bay, Gary Bartz, and the list goes on and on. It could be blues players too. I mean, there was no formula. And I just wonder how, you've seen it longer than I have to a degree, but I just wonder, maybe the better question is how you've always consciously, unconsciously, subconsciously avoided a formula trip. Because I think it's important for younger cats who are seeking to know how you've been able to stay, quote unquote, off the grid.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of follow what I like about music, and there's things about modern pop music. One thing that I like that's happened is it became so influenced by sort of hip hop and stuff that there is like a stress on rhythm and things are funky, but they're just largely not dynamic at all.
Well, that's the thing. No, you're exactly right. They say
it really comes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, like the rhythms I like, but then I think it's a product of the delivery system now, where everybody wants like instant. You got to be able to hear it on your phone for a second and like it in the first 10 seconds, or else you just scroll past it. There's no attention span for like putting on a record, and it takes a couple minutes to get going, really. And like that.
Dude, how about like 3 or 4 times to actually hear? I mean, it takes a while to get your ears around stuff. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yep. Yeah, some of my favorite records I didn't really dig at first, but then I gave them time. But it's just really hard to do that in there's so much information available, which is great on one hand, but on the other hand, when you used to go to the store and buy a record, you kind of were locked in. You're like, I got this thing, might as well listen to it.
Right, right.
You're not going to not put it on again. It's like, especially when I was younger and I had like 10 records, and I just would play them over and over again. So I just think that the way of consuming music has changed. So it's kind of partly a product of that. The saving grace is that there's been more, when you go to a gig, it's different. You're in the room, you're stuck there, and you're gonna at least give it a chance to see what happens. So you can kind of draw people in and deal with a longer program, and sort of more esoteric ideas because people are in the room.
I think you're nailing this. I've come to learn over the last couple of years prior to the pandemic, when you're there with Johnny V, Tony Hall, and Ivan Neville, and they start playing before sound check is even done, and they're grooving for like 40 minutes. That's the live scene. The live music experience is still very urgent, and it can be rather urgent and vital.
Yep.
What do you think people are listening for in that first 50 seconds to get off on the music so that all of a sudden it's going to become a pop hit? Because I don't even know what they're listening. I don't even know what cats are listening for to know if it's good or not. I'm so unpop.
Yeah, I mean, when I lived in New Orleans, I never listened to anything on the radio. OZ, but I wouldn't listen to I didn't know anything about what was happening in popular music. And I moved to Los Angeles, and my son was getting of age where he was starting to be interested in what the other kids were listening to and stuff. So I put on like top 40 radio with him in the car sometimes, and it just didn't even sound like music to me at first.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just like the sound of it was so crazy. Like the mix and everything's super in your face and compressed and full frequency, and it's just like it was a little much for me. But then as I listened to more, I started hearing things in it, and it's really like, people are used to the thing being super exciting right off the bat, really like big and splashy, and it's a thing. I don't like to like hate on music because I like music of any kind more than not music.
Absolutely. I'm with you, man.
Like,
no, totally.
Anyone doing it is still, they could be doing something a lot worse for the world than making music. So it's cool, but it doesn't necessarily float my boat. But it's like I like that. It's basically you're making some kind of art, and if I don't like that kind of art, I'll make something else. So.
Talking to Robert Walter here on the Jake Feinberg Show. I've talked to a lot of different people. They've handled the time off of this extended pause in different ways. I got through Royal Potato Family and Kevin Calabro. He sent me a couple of tracks that we came in with Court called Or Else, and I just kind of wanted you to talk about, as honestly as you can, how I mean, if somebody took the microphone away from me for 18 months, I probably would be in a somewhat psychic despair, I think. For a lot of cats, including yourself, I believe, the bandstand, especially when you're cooking the groove with people you love, is your yoga. And so if somebody took that away from me, I wouldn't be doing that great. And I was kind of hoping you could talk about how hard it's been, if it's been hard this time, and then ultimately how you've been inspired enough to be able to create this new record. I mean, it's really fun. I know it's people sending stuff from different parts of the country. It wasn't like everybody in the same room, but it's still Walter. The vibe comes through, and I just wanted you to talk about inspiration through this absolutely insanely dark time for a touring road dog musician.
Yeah, I came like right off some gigs with Great Boy All Stars, went home, and then like 2 days later everything locked down, and so it was like it was a real whiplash moment. We're like okay, well, what happens now?
Right.
I think I think for me I found a way to make it work for me. So I didn't spend much time getting bummed about it. There's some aspect that it was kind of nice to take a breath, because for me I play in so many different projects. I was already prepping Jazz Fest because I had 12 gigs with different groups and different setups.
I love this, yeah.
So I was already working on this stuff, and it gave me a chance to be like, what do I really want to make, or what can I focus on that I never get a chance to, a lot of times you can't practice on the next sort of skill set because you're trying to prep for gigs. So I was always in this I got to learn all these songs. I didn't have to learn those songs anymore, so I could learn what I wanted. I could compose. I started teaching a little bit, which actually kind of helps organize your head about your playing a lot, because when you have to explain it to somebody, you start solving little problems that you always overlook. Like there's some things where I just was lazy and never figured out, and when you start teaching people, you feel kind of guilty about that. You're like, okay, this is actually what the chord is, or this is actually what you should do with your left hand or whatever. So so that helped me. The one thing that really bummed me out was not being able to play with other people, So I started having long conversations with my friends who are musicians, and even that helped, even though we weren't playing music, but just to have the back and forth. And then I started working on this music, and I thought, might as well use the time to do something. So I started sending stuff back and forth. I also played in a lot of my friends' albums in the same way. Like Mike Gordon's working on an album, he just would send me his rough mixes, and I'd layer keyboards on it, and then he'd take them and edit them. And so we started doing this sort of virtual collaborations all over. And this stuff is just my little corner of it. But I played on Reed Mathis's stuff. I had a lot of friends sending me music too, and it was just our sort of way of dealing with it. It sort of felt like we were all in outer space in our little separate spaceship. You know what I mean?
Totally, dude. Yeah.
And it was the only way to get together. So, and it doesn't replace playing. I've just started to play out again, and it really is, an incredible feeling. It makes me appreciate it, and I won't complain about gigs anymore.
Ever.
I used to be like, oh, I got all these things this week, I just want to break, and now I'm very thankful that I have it. But anyway, so this music was fun to do, and it was also a way of learning how to record myself, because I didn't even want to go to a recording studio. So I just, I bought a couple microphones, and I had always made home demos, but I never tried to make a finished product. So it's cool. I learned a lot about sort of engineering stuff, and it was fun. These songs are mostly shorts, so I call them I say it's like a digital 45. It's they're 3 minutes aside. And I did that because I was conceiving it as a vinyl project, and I was trying to fit it so it would fit on two sides of a LP. But then I decided maybe, rather than wait until all that production happens, I'd like to just start releasing this stuff. So that's what it is.
We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't. Oh, we'll see if you can get it, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Okay.
I think there's a problem for them that is there's too much material. It's like trying to do the history of classical music and play it and write it. I mean, it's pretty hard to say to start at Handel or Haydn and work your way up to Stockhausen, and then have any time left over to find out who you are. So we have a little bit of a time problem in the amount of material that's digested. But I think you're right, though. Probably most guys go back for 10 years or so, and then that's their beginnings. But if a guy is serious and wants to really continue on in the music, eventually they do end up covering most of the bases. They just have more to do now, and a lot more to do that they have to learn now.
Well, I think that you're hitting on something. We're talking to Dave Liebman here. Oh, he just gave it away. I just gave it away. That was my interview with, and what that was not exactly the clip I wanted to play, but I wanted to ask you, and maybe you've talked about this with your students, but or some over this time, but like, where do you think an appropriate place to start exploring jazz? A lot of people would say that younger cats today don't go back far enough in the lineage. He was saying that, maybe cats go back, when they're younger, they go back maybe 10 years, but if they're serious, they're going to go back to, as early as they can. And I wanted to know, I mean, Liebman kind of was starting with later Coltrane. I've heard Roger Kellaway tell me that, the birth of the cool period is an interesting place to start, maybe an appropriate place. I just wonder with you how you get cats to keep stretching back in the lineage of music, because I think if you do, you're going to be able to find your own voice better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think it's really, it's not the best idea to just copy the people that are just the generation before you. Although that's a lot of times the people that you learn firsthand from, because that's when you start working in bands, you're with people that are just a little bit older than you. But as far as like listening to recorded music, well, the first thing is people have to love it. So I wouldn't tell a student not to listen to something because it's not old.
Right.
So if something really gets them excited, that's the first thing. That's always good. And that's also something that I try and do when I'm teaching students is I'll ask them, like, what song do you want to learn? And it'll be something that'll keep people hooked if they can actually like see results and play their favorite song. That's always a good thing. But when you're getting interested in jazz or Black American music or whatever we want to call this whole thing, it's just important to see like what led to what. So I like to listen to like the earliest, like barrel house piano stuff, like stuff that's really, really, and I try and teach people coming off like learn a blues and like a real blues, like learn what this language is a little bit, because
Exactly.
that informs everything after it. Even the most outest, free music or crazy fusion all has its roots in that, and that's why it makes sense. And that's our language, and it also makes it more fun to listen to music when you realize how interconnected they all are. So I always tell people that if they want to get interested in technique, listen to like Fats Waller or Art Tatum. That stuff will blow your mind.
Yeah.
And that's early music, and it's sort of, so, and then it goes on, and then, but like starting on like a Chick Herbie McCoy thing is without knowing something about the music that came before. A lot of times it won't have quite the roots, and you won't play like them because they know that stuff. You know what I mean?
What about? Because like Robert Walter's always throwing up these really funky records from the early 70s, which was sort of the pinnacle of all this stuff converging, where you had original masters and combined with, sort of the younger cats, and then a lot of the blending of the music. One thing I cannot stop listening to, and I don't exactly know why, but it's like these trio albums. They're very famous. I mean, one's Bill Evans at the Vanguard with Motion and LaFaro, and then another one is Live at the Trident with Larry Bunker and Chuck Israels. And I don't know what it is, Robert, but it's like every time I listen to side A, and then it sounds different every time. Did those early 60s Don Friedman, those early 60s piano trios have an impact on you at all?
Yeah, I mean, mainly it was on the more funky side of things, like Ramsey Lewis records and stuff. I like stuff that was like less highbrow. It just makes sense.
It's just like Larry Bunker, the brushwork he's doing. It just sounds, it's so dynamic. It's just so, the vibe is so good. But I know what you're saying. I'm with you.
Yeah, but yeah, I've spent some time digging Bill Evans stuff too. I think that that's you're nailing a time when all of the things were coming together too. Like the 60s in general had the things were starting to stretch in interesting ways, but they still had a foot in the roots really hard. And the music wasn't commercial, really. Later in the 70s, jazz became like something you could really sell, because of Grover Washington, George Benson, people like that, for better or worse. So once it becomes this big commodity, it becomes kind of, they're chasing pop music things, and it diluted in ways. Although at the beginning of that, I love what was happening. When people started listening to Sly Stone and James Brown, but they were jazz musicians. That combination, or Hendrix even, they kind of absorbed the psychedelia and things that were happening in the pop music world. But by the late 70s, it starts to be, I don't know, it just, things start to become formulaic. They know what works. It's the same happens with movies. Like when, in sort of like the late 60s, early 70s, the studios didn't understand what the counterculture was doing, so they just gave money to these young directors and let them make all kinds of weird shit.
Absolutely.
And then by the 80s, they figured out the formula. This will get kids in the theater, so they're just less creative,
Well, it's amazing because the bean counters in the late 60s, like even just for Elektra, for instance, which Densmore was like, it's a boutique label. They were like, these cats, we don't know what they're doing, but they're making us money, so who cares? And then all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, there's a lot of money to be made if we just get the efficiency model in here. And it's, so I guess one thing I wanted to ask you about was maybe before Gray Boy, you talked about playing with guys that, can you talk about like the first real band you were in and the older musicians and the kind of influence they had on you, especially as it related to developing, just being able to call out tunes is one of those things. I mean, that's what Lovano was just telling me. He went to a wedding one time. Sal Nistico was like, I can't make it. He shows up at the wedding and it's like Jackie Byard on Fender Rhodes and him and, I forget who the drummer was. It was like Walter Perkins on drums. And they were just calling out tunes and just playing to the moon. And I feel like a lot of younger cats don't have a huge bag of tunes, and there's a variety of reasons for that. But when you go back to your earliest days on the bandstand, can you talk about some of the older cats that sort of, helped you?
Well, really, I learned from that blues band, and that's where I got sort of like a background in the stuff that I was interested in, which was like, Bobby Bland and all the Chicago blues things, and like it was a sort of a mixture of all this, 12-bar blues mostly, but then also a little bit of stuff from sort of more soul or R&B. And those were things that I really did. I never really learned a lot of jazz tunes, although I did have a band with Kochemia where we sort of played, tried to learn as many like sort of real book kind of songs as we could. Mm-hmm. And then later we had a band that focused more on Horace Silver, Jackie McLean, Eddie Harris, the sort of like a little bit off the radar, not the standards, but like what we thought of as standards we liked. So, and then in Grey Boy, we really made an attempt to pay tribute and learn that music for real. So I learned a ton of, off of Rusty Bryant, Lou Donaldson.
Oh, I love this.
Boogaloo Joe Jones, all that kind of stuff. And those were like our standards. The only problem is not a lot of other people know them.
But I think that's the thing. I know.
The jazz world, where you can just meet people and go, oh, we're going to play in this Riverside, Although it's getting more like that now because there's a generation that I think grew up on us and Soul Live and all that and sort of started to play those songs. But
were you doing like? Hold on. Were you? I mean, because you just
had our own standards. I know a lot of tunes. I just don't know the ones everyone else knows.
No, it's perfect because that's the same thing with me. I mean, but I'm not a musician, obviously. But I mean, you talked about these crossover groups that had, clearly jazz leanings, but then they had these sort of, Horace and Les McCann. Compared to what the Jazz Crusaders before they became the Crusaders, and Les McCann in his own groups, those tunes lent themselves to even rock. I know like blues rock bands would play those tunes because they were accessible to them. Uh-huh. And I mean, when you talk about the newest. This 2-song release, Or Else and Franklin. I mean, I going back to Liebman and Gene Perla. I have another clip with Liebman telling me about that. There's really nowhere else to go musically, and some people would disagree with that. But it's all been done. You can put different instruments together, which is cool. I just wonder when you approach a new project like this, what are the most important priorities for you in creating an album? Because I think, and do you agree with that sentiment that there's in music, there really isn't. It's kind of all been done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at this point for me, I'm not as interested in like creating sort of recipe. Conceptual ideas like, oh, the music's going to do this. I'm trying to speak in the voice. So like, I'm just trying to explain my experience with my own voice, if that makes sense. So it's not so much to me about like making something innovative or combining these two things. I combine things because that's what I want to say, but that's not the thing. I don't know if I can explain.
But you're talking about.
I'm trying to be the thing instead of. But I had a friend, Dan Prothero, my producer for a few records. He said I'm more interested in ingredients than recipes. Meaning that like you get the right player and they're fascinating. It's not about what your design of the music is. You just cast it and let it happen.
That's the gumbo, man. That's the most beautiful part of it all. I mean, it's just like, add a little bit more of this. You don't necessarily follow the exact recipe. Do you feel like, I mean, you may not be the best person to ask about this, but as far as like your own individual voice, do you feel like that's a forever journey? Do you feel like you are, that's an issue in improvisational music to a degree, even though I don't listen to a lot of modern improvisational music. It's just there seems to be a homogenization of sound. How do you feel about the development of your own individual sound on any of the keyboards that that you play? Do you feel like your own voice has really come to the forefront?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, like everybody, I was imitating things that I liked, and I was emulating my heroes and all that. But it's interesting. There is some part of it is my limitations because I'm not the hardest working, shedder. Like,
Yeah.
I sort of like learn as much of the thing as I'm interested in, and then I won't push through to the next thing. I've learned, like, I've transcribed the first chorus of so many things and never done the rest of it, or I just learned the lick I like it from it, or whatever. I wasn't a student in that way that some people are, where they just voraciously learn everything and want to master everything. I sort of, picked and choose some things, and because of that, I have sort of pet phrases. I have physical habits, and interesting. I think my playing has gotten better over the years, but when I listen to something from 20 years ago, I kind of play in the same way. There's something in common about the things that I'm attracted to, and I want to promote certain sort of intervals and rhythms and sort of pacing of things. So I actually think I've had a sound from pretty early. I just keep refining it and making it better. But
I love that. I mean,
it feels like a thing. Yeah.
I mean, like when you talk to cats or when you give lessons, how do you teach? I mean, I remember Harvey Mason telling me that, I know you're not a faculty member at a university, but he when he worked with Alan Dawson at Berkeley, Alan was like, I really can't teach you anything new, so why don't we just play games, and someone would get on the vibes and the other cat would get on the drums, and they just trade back and forth. And ultimately, when Alan was on the road or something, Harvey'd get a call to fill in for him with the Duke Ellington Orchestra, and it was just like this farm system of incredible, like, cultivation and talent. And I just wonder when you like, I think that no one's going to mistake you. You're not Michael Melvoin or Don Randy. I mean, we're basically peers. But you just through your experience, you are a veteran compared to a lot of cats. And I wonder what you have found working with younger cats in terms of trying to get them to not necessarily be voraciously, like, not conquer things and master them and get to play something perfectly, but rather, like you said, maybe even develop some pet sounds, some habits, but, keep refining that in order to, like you said, get to a point where your sound is just, it's just getting more refined.
I've been thinking about this a lot because, like, people have been asking me, like, how do you find your sound? Or we were talking on, some kind of chat about this. I think there's actually, the sad part is there's two different things. One, if you really want to be employable,
yes,
it's great to be super versatile and sort of transparent and sort of invisible, like, stylistically. So I can cop any kind of style and play it well, just like you expected. That makes you highly valuable as a sideman, because most of the time when someone writes music, they don't really want your personality in it. You know what I mean? Like, on a
you totally
session,
know, yep, that's right.
I just need a piano player. Stop all your creativity. Just come and play the thing the right way, But that will not make you get called for you. That'll just, you're just one of the people that can do the thing. You're sort of hammering nails, It's just you're just doing a job.
Well, I just want to say, like, what Rusty Young.
That's not particularly interesting to me, but that is, if somebody just wants to be a working musician, it's not a bad idea to just learn as much as you can, and a lot of people learn a lot from, like, YouTube tutorials now. So you can learn anything from, like, I do it when I have to fix the sink. You can copy the thing and learn enough, and people do that with music. Like, how do you play this song? Instead of going and listening to the record and having their own experience with it, they're sort of being told what to do. That's not to say that someone teaching you is bad, but part of part of teaching, if you're doing it right, is teaching the person how to learn on their own.
Totally.
You know, not just teaching them where to put their fingers. So I think I tell people if they really want to have their own sound, you lean into your sort of, you know, little musical fetishes and even your limitations. Like, you know, figure out what couple things you like. I remember listening to like Thelonious Monk and just loving the whole tone thing. He throws that in everywhere, and you can tell that's one of his favorite things.
Right.
He puts it whenever he can. It's like, and whenever that's, you know, whenever it's allowed, he'll play that. And it always had this cool, it evoked sort of this mysterious, strange, you know, ugly beauty. So, and I just loved that. So I started doing that a lot and putting that in my music, you know, are just, you know, it's just about finding little things you like and not being scared of them. Don't think, oh, it doesn't sound like, you know, I don't sound slick like the world's greatest player. That's fine. Just do your thing, you know.
Well, I mean, Rusty Young, the great pedal steel player, rest in peace, he said that he actually left the studios in Los Angeles because he realized that all they wanted him to do was fill a sonic space. They didn't want him to play him. Mike Clark told me, too. I mean, in the mid-'70s, it was like he'd go in for, I don't know, Sean Phillips' date or something. Or I mean, they'd say, don't play you, just play straight beats. And so that to me is so
most of the time that's what it is, particularly in LA, I think.
Right.
Because it's on such a level, like it costs money and it's going to make money, and these things are like most of the time you just need the instrument basically and someone to do it right. But I just need a bass, put the bass on this. You're not like I need this kind of bass, you know. And then in different cities, there's more of an emphasis on individualism, but I don't know. I never really spent any time in Nashville, but I imagine that's a little bit, although the players are hot, there's probably a little bit of a generic thing going on there too, because the records are so commercial.
Oh my God, you know? It's pervading everything, man. Level, of course it is. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, let me. This was astounding to me, though. I did not know about, and I'm quoting here from your Bandcamp page, but a robust film soundtrack career. Now, I know that you were, you know, I'm sure you got at least 2 copies of Dynamite Brothers, Charlie Earland, and you know, Enter the Dragon, Lalo Schifrin. Yeah. Like that again was totally experimental. You had full string sections. You had 70 people in a room hitting at one time. It was funk. There was obviously funk incorporated into the music, which is why those are high dollar records. Can you talk a little bit about the human qualities of your soundtrack experience, or has it been more of a come in, plug in, play your part, and put it all together? Like I did not know that you've been cooking the groove on soundtracks.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate enough. How it started was the Grey Boy All-Stars got a cold call from Jake Kasdan, who was directing his first film called Zero Effect. This is years ago, back in the 90s, wow. I guess. Wow. Like 96, 97. So, and he was a fan of our band and had been listening to this stuff like at college when he was writing the movie.
I love
listening to our music. Dude. So he's like, what if I could just get this band to do it? So, so our first job was To Be Us, which was unbelievable. And we pretty much had free creative reign. When I listen to it now, it sounds a little bit like we're serving the film, but we also have like an agenda of what we want to make. And I've learned after doing it for years that the film should come first, and it's really storytelling, and it's not it's not the composer's medium. It's more of the director's medium.
Yeah, you were just fired up, yeah, whatever.
But I actually love it. We're supposed to be prepping a release of that music, which we've never put out.
Oh my gosh, dude, that is sick.
And it was a real high point for Grey Boy All Stars. It's like the music's real interesting, and it the forms get all weird because you're trying to play the picture. So I love that stuff where it's funky, but there's odd bars all over and stuff. It hits a lot of my sweet spots. Anyway, so and then as Grey Boy All Stars started, we broke up because Zach had left the group, and so for some years that band wasn't playing. I went on the road, Carl went on the road, but our guitar player, Mike Andrews, also known as Elgin Park, he liked being in the studio and he liked doing film work. So he continued on and ended up doing the music for that show, Freaks and Geeks. And then everyone who was involved in that show went on to be successful in Hollywood and make movies and stuff like that. So mostly I work for Mike, and he lets me be creative. So I'm not just doing the job. But he's the composer, really. I sort of help him, and I'm just play all the stunt keyboard parts that are hard to play, and we've gotten to do a lot of stuff. It's a mixed bag. Some things are really creatively satisfying, and some things are a little bit like more difficult to put yourself in because what the film needs is maybe not all of your personality. But I like it when the music is not generic and is a character in the film, and that's why I like older films, because in general the music plays a more it defines the film in a way, instead of most of the time when you watch a modern Hollywood film, the music kind of does more or less what you would expect it to do.
Absolutely.
It doesn't take you. It doesn't. If you listen to something like Klute, that's a sound that only belongs in that movie, and it makes the whole thing our Planet of the Apes, for God's sakes.
Right.
That's just like a high level art. And it wouldn't work without that soundtrack. So,
what is it?
But I've always been a fan of Lalo and Jerry Goldsmith and all the classics, like Bernard Herrmann. Stuff's great.
Yeah, I mean the what is it? The Flight of the Condor, Dave Grusin. It's unbelievable, that stuff. But
3 Days of the Condor.
3 Days of the Condor. I mean, I found that for like $4 the other day. What? Oh, this is my question. I remember asking Steve Cropper. I said, have you ever played a gig without a drummer? And he said that it was impossible. There was one gig where the drummer didn't show, and he wound up having to play drums, and Duck Dunn played bass. They made it through the gig. But I've been listening. I just found this Vince Guaraldi album. It's a second press on Fantasy. And so it says a trio, right? And I took it home, and I didn't look at the liner notes at first, and I put it on, and there's no drums. It's Eddie Duran, Ben Riley, and Vince. Now, can you talk about your experiences playing in a drummerless, and the same thing with the Stan Getz Oscar Peterson record? It's Herb Ellis, Ray Brown, Oscar, and Stan. Can you talk about any?
And the Nat King Cole trio from back in the day.
Thank you very. Of course, he was the original.
No drums.
Yeah. And so, can you talk about drummerless?
I think it's real cool. It's scary.
Explain why it's scary. I mean, I really think that you're one of those cats that would die, even though it's kind of scary. You dive into it. I mean, it's something that it's the hippest thing when I hear that. For some reason, everyone has their own inner time feel. Nobody's relying on the traditional trap set. Anyway, I'd love to know any experiences you've had playing with the drummerless ensemble.
I've never really done it on a gig. We've done things here and there where I guess I must have done something at some point where it was like piano and guitar or something.
Right.
But not often. It's something that I've actually always thought about, though, is doing a drummerless funk group.
Dude, it would be really so funky, man.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like Vince is...
And it sort of makes you pay attention to the parts, too, in a different way,
It's
like you can hear what's happening. Yeah, I think there's something to that. That's an idea I've sort of flirted with. I just haven't been brave enough to pull it off. But
I mean, it's brave. It's brave in a funk bag. It's also brave because the stuff that I've heard is always acoustic piano. So it would just be interesting to just to see how it could float along and be kind of magical. I just listened to that, and it's like Vince is playing much more classically based, and then Eddie Duran's sort of keeping time with that guitar. But it was was I dreaming, or did I see a picture of you, Dan Horn? You guys played a private gig with
oh, that was like just 2 days ago.
Dude, tell me, how did that materialize? Dude, I would have paid high dollar to see that.
Well, I think we're going to continue to play. Everyone had a good time. I met Dan. I was playing another private event, and he filled in last minute to set up the PA because he had just played there like the week before with Circles, and he knew the space. It was another backyard, party, just a private party here, but the sound man couldn't make it. So Dan said, "Oh, I'll come down and bring my stuff." And at that, we started talking, and we had a lot of mutual friends. And he's like, "Oh, if you ever want to play together, let's do this." So we just started jamming, and then that's
awesome, dude. He's one of my favorite people, man.
It's very interesting. I think that has some potential as a collaboration, because we're coming from different worlds, but we're both sort of improvising in an adventurous way.
And Gowan's a great drummer too. Yeah,
Yep.
So I mean, were you playing were you
pleasantly surprised it kind of had liftoff,
Oh, dude, you and Horn and Gowan, I mean, that's going to lift way off the ground, dude. Were you playing you should break out some of those Sonny Phillips Prestige. I mean, Horn's not hip to that stuff, but that would be the headiest stuff. You bring back some of that funk boogaloo from the early 70s.
Yeah, we were playing mostly tunes of mine or some sort of, I don't remember what everything we did. We did like a little bit of Miles Davis-y kind of stuff, but it almost didn't matter which tune because that's what I liked. It was so combustible. It sort of really went there off the bat. So
I love it, dude.
It's pretty exciting.
Tell people how they can get a hold of this. You calling it an EP? This new release you have. I mean, how do you...
I'm calling it a series of digital 45. That was our sort of press line, and so there's two. It'll be 2 tunes at a time. They come out just about every 3 weeks, and they're just available everywhere streaming. You can pay for them if you want to go to Apple Music or Bandcamp, but you can also just listen to them. It's stuff I made at home for basically free. So it was something that occupied my time, and I think they're interesting. There's a lot of collaborators on them. Mike Gordon plays on some, John Kimmock, Jake Nager, Zach's brother, who was in my band way back in the old days. Craig Broadhead from Turquoise, and Stanton Moore, of course.
What is your what does your gut tell you about? I mean, you guys played a private gig with Horn, obviously. You played what does your gut tell you about the domestic touring circuit? Are we still quite a ways away from? And I mean, getting back to it was.
It seems like things are going well. People are playing now, and it seems like things are well attended. Hopefully that'll last. I think I was afraid that so many venues are full and the economy would be so bad, and everybody, and people get out of practice of going to shows.
Sure.
My audience is getting older, so that year not going to shows might make them think, hey, I could stay home. But it seems like people come back to it with a lot of enthusiasm. Like all the shows are doing well. I'm getting calls for a lot of stuff. You know, my sort of rescheduled jazz fest is as busy as ever.
Well, no, I want to get to that because
So,
I'm going to be there. Please tell me you got something going on the 6th through the 11th. I got to come see Walter. Where are you gigging?
I am there at that time, and I have gigs, but I can't remember what's on the schedule.
All right,
and there's also some things that aren't announced yet, so I can't do them. But something that is announced, I'm playing with Reed Mathis and Steve Kimmock.
I saw that, yes.
And we haven't done that. We haven't done that in a few years. I guess we did it on Jam Cruise right before, in the beginning of 2020. But we haven't done that often. That used to be a group that was, you know, we toured a lot. There's a lot of good chemistry there. So
is like Wally Ingram in that group or something? Was I thinking that? I can't remember.
Yeah, Wally's one night, and the other night is with Terrence Higgins and Donald Harrison, which Donald and Kimmock together is going to be a very interesting.
Dude, where did that come from? I mean, that is insane, man.
Yeah, that was sort of like that gig was scheduled for 2 years ago, and the personnel has changed a little bit over the just from people like rescheduling stuff, and then we were looking for a guitar player, and I said, why don't we get Steve on it? And so that's how that happened. But I'm excited about that. I love those juxtapositions of world. You know, when you take things that great improvisers, but they kind of work in different fields.
I love it, man. I mean, it's that gumbo that you were talking about earlier. If there's one thing, like you said, you wouldn't complain about in the past, you know, you'd be playing some upholstered sewer or, you know, some club, and you know, maybe you'd be grumbling about the conditions and things like that. So that's kind of out. You're not going to complain about gigs anymore. But how do you feel? What else? How else have you grown during this time? I mean, are you? And what is your message to people that are not as seasoned as you, that haven't had as much bandstand experience? That I know for millennials. I mean, my daughters are not millennials, but the younger cats. I mean, this was the heaviest thing that's happened in my lifetime by far, the pandemic, and. For some cats that are not as mentally strong, don't have as much experience, I think that they're facing the idea of whether they really want to continue to pursue music, even if they are completely drawn by it, because they just haven't had, they haven't really touched or tasted whatever success means. They haven't felt that a lot. You have, and you will continue. And I just wanted you to, what's your message to cats who are on the fence about what?
I thought about that. Yeah, I thought about that even with like kids in high school who were like playing football.
Yeah.
And the sort of turning point year, you know, like it might be their last year in high school and they're playing sports.
Totally.
And you can't play for a year. So it kind of can derail your dreams. And it's like bands that were just starting to tour, you know.
Exactly. They've been set back.
Year for that
right?
to happen. Yeah. Yeah, so you might just decide, oh, it's not worth it. You didn't get the traction. I mean, that's part of, though, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's part of, like, what makes you a musician or not is if, you know, the people that are successful are the ones that didn't quit.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And there's always a ton of adversity. Even in normal times, your odds aren't good. You know, it's not easy to do. And, you know, I always said you don't have something to fall back on. That's the way to do it. Because if you have something else to do, you're going to be tempted to do it. I mean, you know, in normal times, even, just because you're going to get beat down and your van's going to break down and you're going to have tons of hotels on your credit card and then the promoter stiffs you. I mean, so many things can happen. And if you have something else to go to, there's a lot of temptation. But if that's all you are as a musician, you can push on through. And then all those experiences just add to your sort of life experience and grit and story, but I kind of think in that way, I do think that we're kind of like, you have to be like a warrior for it. You have to be down for whatever,
I love it.
And, yeah.
It's like Chester Thompson, the B3 player. He told me that the jewel actually is the struggle. And so that's my message to all the cats out there that might be playing smaller venues than they were at the start of the pandemic, and they maybe look at it as a step backward. I would just say, if you are a conduit for spiritual music and it's all you know, then stay on the path and know that it's just a forever journey. And I think that, people will look to you through your music and attitude and knowledge. I think you're a beacon of truth in this time, because there is no roadmap anymore. And anyway, it was great to connect with you again, man. And
thanks so much.
Just let's stay in touch. Let me know if you got any sleeper gigs that first week in Jazz Fest. I'd love to come. Love to come hang and release there.
Yeah, we'll do. I'll be playing every night somewhere.
That is awesome.
That's how it's shaping up. So.
Much love, man. Good to hear you.
Yeah, real nice to talk to you.
Always, man.
Bye.
Take care, bro. Peace. A great day here on the Jake Feinberg Show. Thanks to Joe Lovano and Robert Walter. And we'll be back tomorrow with Turtle Vandemar. Until then,